Hi, I'm Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science Society. The Allan report, the Alberta Inquiry Report, has been released. And of course, the ENGO community is passing it off as nothing but a Google search and not worth the $3.5 million invested in it. But that belies the fact that millions of dollars of foreign funding have poured into Alberta through various environmental groups and have poured into Canada through various environmental groups with the express purpose of blocking Alberta's energy resources and development. Now, some people wonder, why is that? Well, first of all, if you're in the world of clean tech and carbon trading, you need a pretty good reason to get people to accept the unreliable, unaffordable power that comes from wind and solar. So the one thing you could do as a marketer is to paint reliable energy as dirty and present wind and solar as clean. To present conventional ways of doing business where profit margins and performance of stocks were the measure of success, and change that around and say, well, it's actually successful because we're taking care of the environment. We're performing a social benefit and we have great governance. Look at our board. It's full of diversity. So that's what's happened in world markets. World markets have been skewed by two main elements, in my opinion. One being the United Nations Principle for Responsible Investment. This is a group of about 1,000 institutional investors. These are mostly pension funds of academia, of public servants. Groups like the Quebec Caisse de Dépôt are there. Probably many of the health pension plans are also there. And the UNPRI is completely climate-addled, and their financial guru is none other than Al Gore. Now, associated with this transnational, unelected, unaccountable body is the Carbon Disclosure Project. This is a Rockefeller philanthropy project. It's set up as a charity in England. And what it does is it sends out voluntary requests to cities and corporations. Would you please tell us what your carbon footprint is? What are your GHG emissions? And of course, many corporations wanting to be good citizens have complied and filled out these forms. The corporations in Alberta that did that, mostly the oil sands corporations, simply got stabbed in the back because the CDP worldwide came up with a new measure of what's in the pipeline. It's not really about oil. It's whether or not you're building wind and solar farms. So these groups have skewed investments, and alongside them, these environmental groups have denigrated and demolished the reputation of Alberta, the Alberta oil sands, and our cadre of nearly 90,000 professional engineers and professional geoscientists. So these ENGO hacks have managed to destroy the reputations of expert scientists and engineers, and to destroy a multi-billion-dollar industry here in Alberta. And that's the tar sands campaign. So the Allan Inquiry Report and the associated Deloitte report prove that this was a thing, is a thing, and is really happening. So now what are we going to do about it? Well, I think the first thing we have to do is to remove the charitable status of these groups. They're not acting in a charitable manner because according to the Canada Revenue Agency, what constitutes a charity is a group that does tangible, measurable, and local benefit for a community. For instance, the Halifax Food Bank, feeding X number of Haligonians every year for this amount of money and with these measurable benefits to the community. most of these green ENGOs claim that they're stopping climate change. That's why they're collecting money from you. That's why they're also going to the governments at every level in Canada, and asking either for grant handouts or consulting contracts, consulting on things many of them really know nothing about, and giving bad advice. And we've got quite a few examples of that regarding Pembina Institute's misunderstanding of how the power grid works. Yet they're advising all levels of government on how to incorporate renewables into our grid system. And that will be a big fail, just as it is in Europe. So what do we do now? We, first of all, have to acknowledge that there has been this intentional assault on Alberta. We maybe don't even have to know who is behind it, because in my view, many actors jumped on this bandwagon, whether they were people who had an environmental cause that they wanted to see flourish, whether they were competitor nations or competitor companies who thought, here's a way to crater my competitor in Canada. Let's use these ENGOs to be a front for me, a proxy. Or whether it's a combination of genuine goodwill on the part of many environmental activists and climate activists, or genuine fear of a climate catastrophe, combined with these other commercial interests. But principally, we have to reject whatever these people have brought to the table. We have to go back in time and look at the 2005 grant that the Sierra Club got from the Oak Foundation, and the purpose of that grant was to get greenhouse gas emissions listed as a pollutant in Canada. That's foreign influence. That means the carbon tax that you're paying today was influenced by the Oak Foundation and the Sierra Club in Canada in 2005. So we have to go back and look at all the legislation that's been put in place, that's been influenced by this foreign money, like the tanker ban, Bill C-48, like the destruction of the NEB, which was done by Eco-Justice, like the No More Pipelines Bill, Bill C-69. And we need to reverse and repeal all that legislation, because it did not come from Canada. It came from foreign influence. So those are my thoughts at the moment. I'll be going through the report some more. I would like to mention that for many people who are not familiar with the tar sands campaign, going through the Allan inquiry reports might be pretty confusing. So I'd like to recommend that you read our reports. First of all, we have one very simple letter that we sent to Minister Morneau at the time that they were planning to change the Charitable Act so that charities could use 100% of their money for nonpartisan political activity. And that lists about 8 or 10 different key items that we saw ENGOs doing in Canada that were influencing markets in what we felt were inappropriate ways. That's a simple one to read. Then we've got another report that is called Fear and Loathing, how the Alberta oil sands became a national pariah. That one is quite comprehensive and will give you a much bigger and cohesive picture. Then we've got another report called Protest versus Green Trade War. And this actually takes the words of these environmental groups themselves and shows what they were doing as part of the tar sands campaign. And probably most important for Canadians, we have a series of 4 reports. We call them the 4 green reports. There's dark money, big green money, the green Titanic, and Money Matters. Money Matters shows the political advantage that these ENGOs have got in Canada now. And then we've got dark green money that shows some of the foreign money. We did these in 2019, long before the Allan report. And then big green money shows how these foreign-funded ENGOs have actually capitalized on that money and then cashed in on government funding. So a very big part of the money that they get comes from municipal, provincial, and federal governments. In fact, in 2018, Environmental Defense reported to the CRA that almost 30% of their revenues came from government. They're already a tax subsidized charity. Why do they need more of your taxpayer dollars? And finally, we have two other reports. One is called The Green Titanic. And in The Green Titanic, this is about the fact that the Charitable Act was changed so that now these charities can use 100% of their funds for political activity, nonpartisan political activity. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry in Canada now, multi-billion-dollar industry, and with very partisan activity and very skewed response to important things like climate change. Climate change is real. Humans do contribute to it. But the most recent AR6 report shows us that actually the climate emergency is over. What caused the fear of a climate emergency was that people were misusing a scenario called RCP 8.5, which is the most catastrophic, least likely, most implausible scenario. Now that scenario has basically been put aside by the IPCC report, and therefore the climate emergency is over, and these environmental groups can no longer and should no longer be able to cash in on that claim. And our final report is called Manufacturing a Climate Crisis, and it addresses West Coast environmental law. This is a smaller environmental legal charity in Canada, but it's one that used your tax dollars to go to annual general meetings of Kinder Morgan in Texas and threaten them with legal risks regarding the development of Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline. I don't think that's a charitable activity, personally. I don't think anyone would. So I hope that you'll read our reports. I think they'll help you make more sense of what the Allan inquiry is all about. I think when you see copies of tweets of environmental groups cheering that they blocked $19 billion in pipelines, that you might have a different feeling about whether or not these people are actually providing a net public benefit to you and your country, because that's a requirement for a registered charity in Canada. You have to provide a net public benefit. And since Canada is now, in deep debt, and we have certainly lost hundreds of billions of dollars in investments because of the activities of these groups, I can't see any net public benefit there. So let's hope that the sunlight of the Allan inquiry is the best disinfectant, and let's hope that these green monsters go the way of Halloween monsters.